I built a dream app of every business owner, which is an unlimited lead generation app using just Lovable N8N. All you have to do is fill out the simple form with the criteria you want your leads to have and specify the number of leads you want to generate. Then the app finds and scrapes the leads using a very clever method and inputs all of them inside a Google Sheet. Immediately after it finishes, it notifies the person that all of his leads are ready by sending him an email message that includes the link to the Google Sheet. The best part, it is completely free to get started with, and you can realistically sell it to basically every business for thousands of dollars each, since almost all of them are in need of new qualified leads. So in this video I will show you exactly how you can build this app step by step while explaining my full thought process behind everything that I do. Now the first thing we have to do is to build the front-end UI of our app, and for that we will use Lovable.dev, which is an AI app builder that allows us to build incredible looking UIs just by typing some simple prompts. So to do that I will simply come over here and say, create a lead generation app in which the user will be able to give you the following criteria, and then I specified all the criteria I want the user to be able to input. I said job title, location, employee size, email status, industry, and at last the number of leads that person wants to generate. And then I said, and then this app will generate those leads based on this criteria. But I specified to do not try to create any of the backend functions because I will create them inside N8N. And that is important to specify, guys, because if you do not actually tell Lovable that, it might actually try to build the backend of the app as well, and then you will end up with something very messy, simply because Lovable is not capable of building a backend like that. That's why we're using N8N. And then I simply told it, just focus on building a nice looking front-end UI. I want it to look modern with nice sharp colors, just like this example. And now what I will do is I will come over to Google and search for a nice looking app UI, simply find one that I like. Let's say for example, I really like this one. Now what I will do is I will simply come over here and download it. I will come back over to Lovable, simply upload it, and then click on enter. This way Lovable also has a visual example of exactly how I want the app to look like, making it much more likely to make a very good looking design. But now, while Lovable is building the front end of our app, let's go over to N8N and start building all the backend functions. So simply come over to N8N and create a brand new workflow. That is exactly what I did. And now the first step that we have to do is to add in a trigger node. To do that we simply need to come over here and click on add first step, and I will search for a webhook node, guys. And the reason we're using a webhook and not any other trigger is because this webhook will allow us to connect the front-end interface we're building right now with Lovable to the backend automation we're going to build over in N8N. We're able to do that by using this webhook link over here, and I will show you exactly how you can use it. But before we do anything else, we need to come over here in the HTTP method and change it from get to post, and we're doing that because we're going to be sending a post request over to Lovable to send and receive data, and not a get request. So if we leave it on get, this is actually not going to work. So make sure you change it over to post. And now the only thing you have to do is to simply come over here and click on this link, and then you can come back over to Lovable, which as you can see it also finished creating the UI of the app, which I gotta admit it does look very good over here. As you can see, this is super clean. But before we actually test it, we need to come over here to the chart and simply say, this is the webhook URL. And now what I will do is I will simply paste in the link I just copied. And then I said, send over all the data there every time I come over here and click on generate leads. And I will simply click on enter. This way Lovable actually takes in the URL we just copied and embeds it inside this app. So every time we come over here and click on generate leads, it sends all the information we have filled in over here over to N8N, so we can actually use it and generate those leads. Alright, so Lovable just finished making the changes. And if we actually come over here and fill all this information in, for example, we can say we want to generate leads with a job title of manager, for example. Then over here in the location, let's say United States. On the company size, let's select 10 to 50 employees. Then on the email status, let's select verified. On the industry, I will select finance. And then for the number of leads, let's say I want to generate 300 leads. You can obviously input any number you want over here, But now before we come over here and click on generate leads, what we have to do is come back over to N8N and make sure we click on listen for test event. This way the webhook actually expects to receive data, because if we do not actually click this is not going to work. And now we can simply come back over to Lovable and click on generate leads, and as you can see, lead generation was successful. And if we come back over to N8N, guys, we can see that we do in fact have an output over here with a bunch of data, which means that we have successfully managed to connect a front-end interface in Lovable with a back-end automation in N8N. So I will actually come and pin this data so I don't have to rerun this. And if I actually scroll all the way down here, guys, you can actually see the exact parameters I inputted over into Lovable. You can see the job title, the location, the employee size, email status, industry, and number of leads. And now you might say, will I constantly have to come over here and click on listen for test event? Obviously not. You would just have to switch over to the production URL over here and then copy this URL and give this URL over to Lovable, so you don't constantly have to come over here and click for listen for test event. The reason we're using a test URL right now is because we haven't turned this up active from over here, which means that the production URL wouldn't work. But when we're building this app, it's always good to have the app inactive and use the test URL. It's simply faster and easier to do it that way. So now that we're done with the webhook, the next step, guys, is to come over here and add in an LLM chain. And now you're like, why are we adding in an LLM chain, Damian? Well, this LLM chain will actually need to do three things. First of all, we will use this LLM chain to find us relevant Apollo links. And what Apollo is, guys, is basically a massive database that has millions upon millions of information about leads in multiple different industries. And just so you see how this works, if I come over here, for example, and select a bunch of criteria, let's say I want to make the email status verify. Let's say over here in the job title, I want to target only managers as well. And then let's say over here in the location, I want to do only United States. And this basically sorts through those leads and gives us only leads that fit this specific criteria. But what the magic of Apollo is, guys, is that if I actually exit my full screen and I come over here to the link, this link actually contains the specific criteria I inputted over here. Because if I actually take this link, for example, I copy all of it and I simply paste it in a brand new tab, you will see that this brand new tab opens and has the exact same criteria that we selected before. So if we have access to this link, we basically have access to the full database of these leads. So coming back to N8N, what we will tell this LLM chain is to basically craft us a Apollo link that has all of these criteria over here that we inputted inside our Lovable interface. So to do that, we simply have to come over here and change this from connect to chat trigger node to define below. Then over here in the user message, we need to open this into an expression, and I will open it up so you can take a better look at it. And what I will say is, you are tasked with generating Apollo search URLs, and then I simply gave it base URL template over here that includes all of the options we have inputted inside a Lovable interface. Then I simply gave it some rules for generating the URLs. You can pause and read them if you want. And then after those rules, I simply gave it an example input so it actually understands exactly what it needs to do. And then I also told it what an example output would be. And then after that, what we need to do is to give it access to the actual data we have inputted inside Lovable, so you can create us the specific Apollo URL that we need based on this criteria. So what I will do is, I will come over here in the job title, simply taking the job title schema from over here and drag and drop it over here. Then I will do the same with the location, the same with the employee size, the same with the email status, the same with the industry. And I will also do the same with the number of leads. So I'll simply take the schema and drag and drop it over here. So now this LLM chain has access to all of this information, so you can actually go and create us an Apollo URL that has this exact criteria. And then I also told it your task is, when I give you new criteria, replace the values in the templates and generate the correct Apollo search URL. And then I specifically told it to just output the URL and not anything else like, oh, here is your URL, and then it gives me the URL, because I simply wanted to output me in a simple schema. And then, guys, I also told it I'm also going to scrape, and then over here I say X, so I will simply delete it and I will input the number of leads over here. The reason I'm giving again the number of leads is because I wanted to generate me another schema as well, which is going to be how many repetitions this app should do to generate all of our leads, because I will show you how you can do it by using the free Appify plan and not the paid one, because the paid one you can basically scrape up to 50k in one go, but the free plan you cannot actually do that. you can only scrape up to 100 leads. So we will basically need to continuously loop in order for us to scrape all of our leads. Over here we have 300, if we had 3000, we would do it for 3000. So what I'm basically saying over here is that each page only has 100 leads, so it needs to create me a number of how many times I need to re-loop this in order for me to scrape all the leads that the user asked, which in our case is 300, so we will need to loop 3 times. If it was 3000, we would actually need to loop 30 times. Now if you're using the paid Apify plan, you obviously do not need this inside your prompt, but I want to show you how you can do this with a free one, so that's why I wrote that over here. And then I also told it to give me a title for the brand new Google Sheet we're going to create. That's obviously kinda relevant to the information that we have over here. So that is the full prompt, which is going to be inside my school community, along with a full automation, so you basically don't have to build anything. You can simply join in, download it, upload it over to N8N, and it will populate immediately and be ready to go. But if you do not want to do that, you can simply pause the video as I'm scrolling right now, simply screenshot the full prompt, and then just give it over to ChatGPT, and it will basically give you the text to copy and paste inside the LLM chain. So you can also do that as well. But now that I explained that, I will simply come and close this off, and what I need to do right now is obviously come over here and add in an LLM model, and that is also an important part. I will select ChatGPT for this example, but the important part, guys, is that we need to come over here and make sure we select the LLM model that is search based. And what I mean by that is, after the specific GPT model, it says search next to it, because if it does not, it will not actually be able to search the web to find the specific link. So that's why it's important to actually give it a search based GPT model. And you can obviously select each one that you want from over here. I'll select GPT-4o mini search, and then you obviously need to select your OpenAI credentials as well. Now if you do not have credentials, all you have to do is to simply come over here and click on create new credentials, and what you need to do over here is input your API key. Now you might say, but Damian, how am I gonna find my API key? All you have to do is to go to platform/OpenAI/API keys. I will leave a link for it in the description below, and then you simply have to come over here and click on create new secret key. Over here you need to give it a name. I will name it app, for example. Then you have to come over here and click on create new secret key, and boom, this is your API key. All you have to do is to come over here and copy it, and then come back over to N8N and paste it in over here in the field API key, and then simply come over here and click on save. And as you can see, credentials was successfully created. So now if I close this off, I can simply come over here and select my credentials. And now that we did that, the next thing we need to do is to go back over to the LLM chain and simply come over here and turn on require specific output format. And the reason we're doing that, guys, is because we want to use an output parser. So if I come over here and click on it, you will see that these 3 options open up, which are all output parsers. And now you might say, but Damian, why are we using an output parser? Well, because if you remember before, we want this to output us some very specific things. We want just a link URL, how many loops we need to do again and again, so we actually scrape all the number of the leads that we need, and also a title for the Google Sheet we're going to create. So that is why we're using an output parser, because if we don't use an output parser, what this LLM will do is it will basically give us all the information inside only one schema, and then we will not be able to use it very easily. We will need to modify it again. So to circumvent that, we simply need to come over here, select structured output parser, and then this interface opens up. And now everyone says, oh, this is code, this is super technical, I'm not technical, I cannot actually do this. Well guys, you will not have to write any code yourself. All you have to do is to simply come over here, open up your basic LLM chain, simply copy the full prompt that you just wrote, say write me JSON for this, and simply paste in the full prompt you just wrote and click on enter. You could also give it some more context if you want, but what ChatGPT will basically do right now is it will give you the JSON code for the output parser, as you can see that it did over here. So all I have to do is to simply come over here and click on copy, and I will simply come back over here, go over to structure output parser, delete the previous fake text that it has over here and simply paste this one in. And now if I actually come over here and run this, you will see that it just finished executing. It did look inside the output parser, which is great news. And if I open this up, you can see that we have the data very nicely structured over here. We have the Apollo URL link over here. We also have the repetitions, and we also have a title for a Google Sheet. And just to demonstrate to you, if I actually come over here and copy this link and I paste it in a brand new browser, you can see that this list opens up, which if we come over here and see, basically had the exact same options that we inputted inside a Lovable interface, which is again exactly what we wanted. So now if I come back over to N8N, I will actually pin this data so I don't have to rerun this if something goes wrong. And it's time we actually create this brand new Google Sheet that we will input all of our new leads inside. So I will simply come over here, search for Google Sheets. I will simply select this one and I will make sure I select create a new spreadsheet over here. Then you need to select your Google Sheets credentials. I will select mine. Then over here in the resource you leave it on document. Over here in operation you leave it on create, since that is what we want to do. We want to create a new Google Sheet. Then over here in the title, we will simply come over here in the title the LLM just generated for us, and we'll simply take it and drag and drop it over here. Now you can obviously give it a fake dummy title, but just to make this automation a little bit more clean, I told the LLM to give me an actual relevant title. So now if I come over here and click on execute step, you can see that we do have an output. In fact, over here we have the spreadsheet ID, which means that we have successfully created this brand new Google Sheet, which is called Apollo.io leads, etc, etc. And now it's time we actually start scraping these Apollo URLs in order for us to get the actual information that is inside them. And now you might say, can we not scrape them from inside Apollo? Why do we have to use Apify? Well, Apify is significantly simpler to use for a use case like this, plus it's also significantly cheaper, while Apollo is more than 10 times more expensive. That's why we're going to use Apify to scrape those leads, and we will not scrape them from Apollo.io. But remember, we said we wanted to loop continuously, because I will show you how to do it with a free method. If you do it with a paid, you will obviously not have to do this loop. But because I will show you how to do this with a free method, what you will have to do is to come over here and add in an edit fields node, in which in this edit fields node we'll basically create a brand new value. So to do that, we'll come over here and let's name this value a run, for example, because this is going to be the number of the run that we're going to do, and we'll simply make sure we change this from a string over to a number, because it will be a number, and we'll simply give it the value 1. If I come over here and execute step, you can see that we do in fact have over here the schema that is called run that has the number 1 inside it. And you might say, but Damien, why are we actually doing this? Well, we're doing this, guys, because we will have to check in the next node we're going to add, which is an if node. And what we'll check in this if node, guys, is we will come over here in the function, change it from string over to number, and we will say if the repetition over here, because remember, this is how many times you should loop to get the leads. So we'll say if this repetition is actually equal to, and we'll come over here in the function, change it from a string to a number, and we will say is greater than or equal to, and then we will simply take in this number and drag and drop it over here. And now the reason we did that is because this number, every time we make another loop, we will basically add in +1 to it. So in the next run it will be 2, and then it will be 3. So every time this is actually greater than or equal than this number, if I come over here and click on execute, it will be true, which means that we will actually keep scraping the leads up until this function is not. So now that we are in the true branch, we need to set up the automation to scrape the leads. So how are we actually going to do that? Well, to do that, we will need to use Apify. So if I come over to apify.com, I will leave a link for it in the description below, and I come over here, search for Apollo.io. You will see that a bunch of Apollo.io scrapers will pop up for us, but we're going to use this one, the most popular one, with a 53,000 reviews. So we'll simply select this one, and as you can see, we can also try it for free over here, and this will open up this interface. Now, this interface might seem intimidating to you, but it's actually super simple to navigate, guys. So do not worry, I will show you exactly what you need to do. The first thing that you need to do is come over here to the top, to where it says API, and simply click on it, and then you need to navigate over here to where it says API endpoints. After you click that, what you need to do is to simply come over here in the first option you have, which is the run actor, and simply come over here and copy this link. Which what this link is how we are going to be able to use this actor from inside N8N. And if you come over here and see, it also says that the method should be post. So we also should keep that in mind. So now if we come back over to N8N, how we can access Apify from inside here is with a simple HTTP request. We need to simply select it, and now all we have to do is to come over here in the URL and paste in the URL we just copied, which also includes our own unique Apify API key. So make sure you don't actually show this to anyone, and then we simply need to come over here and change the method from get to post. So now we have configured these two parameters. The only other parameters we need to configure is over here, the body parameters. So to do that, we need to come back over to Apify, close this tab, and then come over here to where it says manual and change it over to JSON, and this will open up this small snippet of code. Now don't worry, you will not have to write any code yourself. All you have to do is to simply come over here and copy it, and then come back over to N8N, come over here in the send body parameters and turn this on, and then come over here in the specify body and change it from using fields below to using JSON, and simply paste in the code you just copied. Now as you can see, if we actually sit there and read this code, it's actually very simple to understand. Over here it says total records and it has a number which is 100, which what this number is, guys, is basically how many leads we want to generate. And then over here in the URLs basically has the Apollo URL we also have from our basic LLM chain. So we simply need to configure these two. To do that, I will simply come over here and click on expression, and I'll simply turn this on, make this bigger so you can take a better look at it, and I will simply come over here in the total records, delete the fake number that it has over here, the 100 one, and then I will simply come back over here in my webhook and scroll all the way down to where I have the number of leads I actually want to generate, which is over here, which is 300, and I will simply drag and drop it over here to where the 100 number was before. And as you can see, now Apify has access to the total number of records we want to scrape. And I will also come over here in the URL, simply delete it, and then come over here, close my webhook, and come over here in the basic LLM chain to where I have my actual Apollo URL that I want to scrape, take it and drag and drop it inside these two quotes over here. So now you can simply come over here and close this off. But before we come over here and click on execute, guys, there is one thing that we did not take into account, and that is the fact that Apollo pages are actually different than how many leads Apify can scrape. And just to show it in practice, as you can see over here, each Apollo page has 25 leads, while Apify can actually scrape 100 leads at a time in the free plan. Again, everything that we're doing right now is if you're going to use the free method. If you're going to use the paid method, you simply set up one HTTP request, you scrape the leads, and you do what I will show you after, so you basically get them back, and then you can upload them to the Google Sheet. It's super simple. But if you're using the free plan, what you need to do is to also take that into account. And what does that mean? The fact that Apollo only has 25 leads in each page means that if we scrape 100 leads with Apify in page 1, Apify actually goes and scrapes page number 2, page number 3, and page number 4 as well, because it scrapes 100 leads. But then if we reloop this, it will again go and scrape the same exact leads. It will scrape page 1, page 2, page 3, and page 4. So we'll basically get the same exact leads, which is not what we want. We want to scrape page number 5, page number 6, page number 7, and page number 8. So how are we actually going to do that? Well, we need to change the number of the page that is inside the URL. And that is honestly the hardest part of the automation to understand, and I don't blame you if you haven't understood it yet. But just to show you, if I come over here in the URL, you can see over here it specifically specifies the page. It says page number equals 1. So we basically need to change this. So every time this loops, then this is a +4. We basically need to make it a +4. So it says page number 5, and then the next one it's +4 again, it says page number 9, etc. Well, how are we gonna do that? Well, very simple, by coming over here and adding a code node. And what a code node does, guys, is it basically allows us to do this exact thing pretty easily. So this is the exact code you need to do this. And if you ask how I actually got this code, I basically explained my issue exactly as it is to ChatGPT, and gave me this snippet of code. Now you can either screenshot this code, simply upload it over to ChatGPT and it will give you the text, or you can join the school community, again, link in the description, so you can basically download all the automation with all the settings already configured. The choice is yours. So what this snippet of code does, it will basically change this page every time it runs. So now in its first run it will obviously be page number 1, but then in the second run it will make it go to page number 5. So we're constantly scraping brand new leads and we don't keep scraping the same exact ones. So it just finished executing, and as you can see over here we have the link. So now I can simply close this off and I can come over here and simply change the URL that I have over here to the one that the code node just gave us. And I did that just to explain to you why we're using the code node, because if I did it otherwise it probably would be hard for you to understand. So now if I come over here and click on execute step, you can see that we have successfully sent a request over to Apify in order for it to scrape the leads that we want. So now if we come back over to Apify, we simply need to take in the run we just did and bring it over to N8N. So to do that we simply have to come over here, navigate over to API and again select API endpoints. But this time we need to scroll all the way down here to where you see get last run dataset items and simply come over here and copy this URL. Then we need to come back over to N8N and search for another HTTP request and then simply come over here in the URL and paste the URL we just copied over here and make sure we have the method on get as well. Now before I actually execute it, it would be best practice to come over here and add in a wait node, since we probably will have to wait up until Apify is done scraping the leads, and I would say in general you just add this on 1 minute and 1 minute wait, and just to make sure that even if this wait time passes and it still hasn't actually gotten the leads, what I will do is I will come over here, open this up, navigate over to the settings, and over here where it says on error, changes from stop workflow to continue using an error output, and I will simply take this and bring this back over to the wait node. This way, if it actually hasn't finished scraping the leads, it will come back over, wait for 1 minute again, and then recheck again. So now if I come over here and actually execute the step, so now if I actually open this up, we can see that we have all the information from 100 of our leads over here, which is great and exactly what we wanted. So now all we need to do is to simply come over here and take this information, simply upload it inside a Google Sheet. So all I will do is I will come over here and search for Google Sheets, and I will make sure I select for append row in sheet. Now again over here you need to select your Google Sheets credentials. I will select mine. I will leave this on sheet within document. Over here in operation we need to leave it in append row because that is exactly what we want to do. We want to create some brand new data inside the Google Sheet. And then over here in the document we can change this from list to by ID, because if you remember before we actually created a Google Sheet and over here we have the specific Google Sheet ID. So I will simply turn this into an expression and drag and drop this over here. And then over here in the sheet ID, I will simply select by name, and since it will only have one sheet, I will simply select sheet 1 and I will change it from map it's called manually to map automatically. And now if I come over here and click on execute step, boom, you can see that it executed successfully and it did in fact input all of this data inside a Google Sheet, which we can actually confirm if we go back over in a Google Sheet. You can see we do in fact have 100 leads over here, that their emails are verified. We also have access to a bunch of more data, as you can see over here, which is not really that useful if I'm gonna be honest, but we do have access to their email addresses, which is the part that most business owners actually care about, as you can see over here in the email column. Now obviously there are some that we were not able to retrieve their email, but for the vast majority of them you can see that we do in fact have their email address. So now what we have to do is to simply finish this looping cycle, come over here and add in an edit fields node. And what we'll do with this edit fields node, guys, is we have to come over here in the name and simply give it the same exact name we had inside the first edit fields, which was run. So I will simply type in run. I will also change this over to a number. And then over here what we need to do is simply type in this expression over here, which what this basically does is it basically takes in this value, which is run, and simply adds in 1. So this will be 2, and then all we have to do is to simply take this and bring this back all the way over here in the if node. So this is basically a constant loop. This will keep happening till we have managed to scrape all of our leads, because this is going to go +1. If I actually execute it so you guys can see, you can see that it is 2 now, and then this will come over here in the if node and recheck again. Do we need to run this again, or have we finished scraping all of our data? And if we haven't, it will keep rerunning this until this function actually turns false, where that would mean that we basically have gotten all of our leads inside a Google Sheet, and then we simply need to send an email message over to that person to tell him, hey, all of your leads are ready. Simply go and check them out. So that is exactly what we're going to do. Simply we'll come over here and make sure we do this when this if node is false. And what we have to do is come over here and add an edit fields node. And the reason we're adding in an edit fields node, guys, is because we simply need to craft the Google Sheet URL so we can actually send it over to that specific person. And how we're going to be able to do that is, if you remember over here when we created the Google Sheet, we have this Google Sheet ID, but we do need to input the HTTPS/Google Sheets, etc., that is in front of it. So we basically will craft this URL right now. So let's let's name this URL, we will leave this on string, and over here in the value, we simply need to type this in. So docs/spreadsheets, etc. You can simply screenshot this so you can take a look at it. Now this is red because if you remember, the if node over here is actually true and not false. But because I don't want to scrape all of this data and lose a bunch of my credits in Apify, I will simply come over here, simply turn this to 4, and if I click on execute step over here, this will actually be true over here. So now if I actually open this up, you can see that it is green right now, and if I actually come over here and click on execute step, you can see that we do in fact over here have the Google Sheet URL. Now all we have to do is simply come over here and add in a Gmail node. So simply come over here and select it and select send a message. Since that is exactly what we want to do, I will come over here and select my Gmail credentials. You also need to do the same for yours. Then over here in the resource, I will select message. Then over here in operation, I will leave it on send, since that is exactly what we want to do. Then over here in do, you simply need to input the email of the person that is actually running the app. So I will input a fake email, let's say for example my email over here. Then over here in the subject, you can simply say something like leads are ready or whatever you want. Obviously I will say leads are ready. Over here in the email type, I will change it from HTML over to text because I simply want to send a simple text message. And over here the message, you can obviously type in whatever you want. I will simply say, hey, the leads are actually ready, make sure you go and check them out in this Google Sheet. You can obviously write this email way better, I'm just keeping it short for this example. And then all you have to do is to simply come over here, take in the Google Sheet URL and simply drag and drop it over here. And now all you have to do is to simply come close this off. I will also come over here and click on add option and select append N8N attribution. I will simply turn this off so we don't have this small annoying message, oh, this email was sent by N8N underneath our email. Now if I come over here and click on execute step, you can see that we do in fact have an output. And if I go over in my Gmail, you can see that we do in fact have this message with a Google Sheet URL, which if we actually click, takes us over to the Google Sheets with all the leads we just generated. And I think you guys can see how useful an app like this would be. And imagine the business owner can go and run this whenever he wants, and he would constantly have more leads that he can actually handle, which is the dream of every business owner. Now I have here some talks that Apify might actually limit their free version and you will not actually be able to use their API in the free version. So if that actually happens, you will just have to upgrade to the paid version in order for you to be able to run this automation. But this honestly shouldn't concern you, because if you're building the system for a business owner, he is the one that is going to cover the Apify cost and not you. So if I'm gonna be honest, you shouldn't even think about it, because you simply will not be the one that is going to pay the Apify cost. Plus, if you actually build the system for a business owner, I would suggest you to go with a paid version because you will have a lot more perks. So now you know how you can build a system like that, but the hardest part is how can you actually sell it? Well, that is exactly what I show you how to do inside my school community, and I actually have 4 courses on how you can sell automations like that. The first one is by using Upwork, the second one is by using cold email, and the third and fourth one are 2 methods that I see nobody talking about, and in my opinion they're the highest leverage methods of them all, which is building an audience on YouTube and on Instagram and then leveraging this audience and basically selling to them. This way, you're not the one chasing the clients just like you do with Upwork and with cold email, but the clients are actually chasing you and they're messaging you to build them the systems that they want. Plus, you can also charge a premium simply because you have built your personal brand and have a lot of social proof, which in the eyes of the client means that you're more likely to deliver a good result. So realistically, if you have a big following on YouTube and on Instagram, you can charge 2 to 3 times more for the same exact system. Plus, inside the school community, I'm about to start a brand new series in which I build a brand new $1 million SaaS with what we will say vibe coding by using Cursor and a bunch of other tools. And this is not like a short-term project, guys. This is actually a business I want to build, and I'm documenting the whole process inside my community. Plus, you also will get access to all the assets from every video I make, including this one. So all you have to do is to come over here and click on the assets tab, simply find the video you want to download the assets from, and then over here you will see a JSON file. You simply click on it, you click on download, and then you come back over to N8N. You click on these 3 dots over here and you click on import from file, you simply upload the JSON file you just downloaded and the whole automation will populate for you automatically, including all the settings we did in this video, so you basically don't have to configure anything yourself. So make sure you click the link in the description and you join my school community to get access to all of this content and a bunch of more exciting stuff that are coming. So make sure you come and check it out, and I will be waiting for you inside. But now YouTube thinks you're going to enjoy this video in which I built a $1 million app using this Lovable N8N. So make sure you go and check that out next, and I will see you over there.